So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because it is time to introduce the one and only Matthew Earley, who has very, very kindly allowed himself to be cajoled to actually speak to us today about his experiences. So Matt, I'm sure he'll introduce himself, but he's a very, very experienced SDET from the Boots organization over here in the UK. And without further ado, here's Matt. I'll let him briefly introduce himself, and we'll move into the final section of this webinar.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so I'm Matt Earley. I'm the lead SDET here at Boots UK. I've been here at Boots for about 5 years now. Prior to my my lead SDET role, when I first started Boots, I looked after the portfolio test management for the whole of the retail and supply chain portfolio, so the EPOS systems and all the back-end mainframe type of arrangements. But my background is really mainly automation. I've worked through all the different products that are around in the marketplace, UFT, QTP, you name the 3 letters, I've worked with them. And now obviously we're in a journey of open source, Selenium type products, and obviously using SourceLabs as well. And here at Boots, we do that. We're a customer, obviously, using real devices as well as virtual ones.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks for that, Matt. So let's move on to the question. So basically, can you just share with me some of the challenges that Boots have faced when implementing automated testing?
Yeah, so for those that are not aware of who we are, so Boots is a Nottingham-based company. It's been around for around about 170 years. It's one of those organic companies that's intrinsic to the Nottingham area. So you'll know Boots if you live in the UK. It's rumoured that you're only 10 minutes away from a Boots store at any one given time across the UK. But we're part of a bigger group of companies. So Boots UK is owned by Walgreens, and we're called WBA. So we are the Walgreens Boots Alliance. So there's Alliance Healthcare as well. So we're a big conglomerate of companies. We stretch globally across many different areas. Part of Dwayne Reed in the US is part of our company. There's some companies in Mexico, Spain, Norway, Indonesia, Thailand, where you'll see Boots, funnily enough, and even in Saudi Arabia. So as a company, we're really global. We have a lot of different systems. And particularly for Boots, one of the challenges that we really face is because we are a large organization, because we are an old organization, we have a lot of different systems, a lot of different interfaces. A lot of challenges come from that because, you know, some of the things are digital, some of them are not. Some of them are things like the EPOS system, some of them are mainframe, some of them are on-prem systems, some are in the cloud, some are microservice based, some are not. So we have a various mixture of all sorts of different architecture. And then we also interface to all sorts of different other architecture bases. So that causes us a lot of different challenges in testing and automation testing, because our frameworks almost have to be all things to all systems that we might have. So when we started on a journey of going into more digital architecture, or microservice-based architecture, we really needed to come up with an automation framework that was going to support that and help us also to move forward. So there's some of the real challenges that we've had as we've gone in this transformation journey into more agile-based projects, delivering faster, delivering quicker, and delivering, you know, at a pace that allows our customers to see the benefit of those new services that come from Boots.
Okay, that's a very, very comprehensive answer. So thanks for that, Matt. So you called out several challenges that are caused by using, you know, different types of frameworks and architectures and such forth. So can you just give us a little bit more detail on how you managed to solve those challenges?
Yeah, so it'll be another detailed answer, I'm afraid. You know, there's so one of the things that we had to do when I particularly took on my role as lead SDET, is we needed to come up with a framework that was going to be able to be transported into different parts of the business. So we settled on a Java-based framework, only because it allowed us then to be able to automate other things and to work with technology stacks that weren't necessarily just simply digital. And really, if you've known any of the history of Boots, I'll give you a quick history lesson. Boots as a company has really been at the heart of innovation for many, many years in the UK. One of the things that you wouldn't have known, or perhaps don't know, is that your 2-day working weekend is thanks to Boots. So in the 1930s, instead of putting off people from the D10 factory that we had, instead of putting them off because there was too much supply, they decided, John Boot decided to give people a 2-day weekend and pay them the same. So a 2-day weekend in the UK is definitely something that Boots has innovated in. But then as time has gone on, we've also innovated into things like ibuprofen. So ibuprofen was found and created as a chemical by Boots. And you have Boots to thank you for all those times when you needed to take some Nurofen or any of those other type products, because it was very much at the heart of the innovation for Boots itself as a company. And then also when we came to EPOS was one of the first things that we were one of the first companies in the UK to have an EPOS system. So when you take all those sort of things, all that history there, innovation really is at our heart, and one of the things that helps us to overcome those challenges is innovating and looking at different ways of being able to do things. So when it came to automation, we had to really kind of innovate and think about, well, how could we do something? In the digital world, it's really easy. The digital world lends itself because the tools are, fairly modern. They're fairly easy. We can use, things like Jenkins, and we can use Bamboo, we can use Spinnaker, we can use all of those tool sets. But when you get to some of the other things that we've got, like our retail systems, like EPOS, like our self-checkout systems, well, then how are you going to innovate and how are you going to automate there? Well, some of the things that we managed to do were using things like Raspberry Pis to flash barcodes at the self-checkout and even the retail systems, so that we can then start to automate these things, because our environments are very physical. They tend to be very tangible things when we're particularly talking about the EPOS system. But then that also cascaded then through into the digital world, in that digitally we were able to do some of the really good practices that are out there, having quality gates, having Sonar Cube, twist lock, all those things, as we worked through a new set of architecture, which was microservice based, Kubernetes underneath, Docker containers, all of those things. So in having the framework that bolted all of that together and provided that capability to all things, it allows us now to have one stream of work that an SDET can move through, and the language is always the same. So we're able to now automate things in our physical EPOS store world, but also use the same framework to automate the other part of our world in the digital world. And that's where SourceLabs comes in a large part, because we use that to do all the heavy lifting on our device farms.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing all this really detailed information. It's really very interesting, and hopefully our viewers are also finding it interesting as well. So just to come on that last point that you made there about the fact that this is where kind of you're using SourceLabs. So can you elaborate a bit more on how SourceLabs fits in with your automation approach? Yeah.
So SourceLabs really is at the core of our pipeline. So we went through an exercise of sorting out many of the repositories that we've got because we've got a repository for each of the different projects and streams that we've got work going on, and we tried to put a governance structure around that allows us to sort of take all those practices and put them back together again in a really easy way. So when it comes to things like the SourceLabs, that's really at the core of our central repo, so that it allows us to then take all of the other bits and sort of core to the same way of automating our devices. So when it comes to like anything like that, it all fits into a core capability which we've provided across the piece that then allows us then to do, you know, our device farm, the things like making sure that we've got, you know, our iOS devices covered off, our Safari, the things that we can't automate very easily, which are things like Mac OS, because you can't virtualize that, not without breaking Apple's strict licensing arrangements. You know, so that sort of thing gives us a real advantage amongst many other things, which I can go on to if you want to. Andy.
Please do, yeah.
Well, I guess it kind of comes back to a little bit of our challenges as well, because with having a big organisation like Boots is the office that we work in, D90, sorry, is round about 4,000 people work here. Space is at a premium, so having great big areas for devices is just inefficient. We then have to have all sorts of things like pat testing done on all our devices. We have to have, you know, we would have to have a maintenance program to upgrade them to the right thing. And this is the advantage that SourceLabs really gives us, because it allows us not to worry about that sort of stuff. We can concentrate on the core part of our business, which is, you know, products and services to our customer base, rather than worrying about a big device farm. Our EPOS system is a little bit different because we have to have the tills there. We can't do anything about that. But not having to have all these mobile devices, and then when the new device comes out, the mobile world is changing so fast. We're seeing, you know, new mobile phones every 3 or 4 months. To keep up with that would just be impossible for us. So having that all in the SourceLabs cloud just allows us then to call on anything that we need to do. If we've got something that's a bit weird and wonderful, we can then pick that up. We can go backwards to some of the really old devices like HTC. I think you still support, which is on the cloud somewhere, which is a really, really old Android device. But again, you know, it allows us to do multiple bits of testing, both automated and manual.
Okay, I mean that's really good to know. So I mean, there's one thing that we sometimes get asked, and I know you're well aware because you're a customer, but our data center for mobile devices is in Germany. I mean, did the facts, you know, did it ever present any challenges to Boots, or were you all happy that the service that is delivered to you by SourceLabs is quite, you know, adequate or better than adequate based on the geography?
Yeah, I mean, we face, like any big corporate organisation, we face challenges around our security levels and what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. And with being part of a big American-based company, a lot of our rules around security come from our US partners. So we had a number of different unique challenges that we had to work with SourceLabs on, and in doing so, we've got to a solution where our security are happy with what we're doing. They're happy with the connections and the connection models that we've got, which don't allow people back into our systems should SourceLabs be compromised in any way. But that's generally not going to happen, is it? Because there is nothing there within the SourceLabs environment for them to look at. But we wanted to make sure that there wasn't a conduit back into the Boots environment, which would allow somebody to get in that was up to nefarious things.
Good to know. Good to know. So then, I mean, you've covered a whole lot of ground there in a very, very short space of time. So the future, what's next for the future of automation? You know, what does the Oracle tell us?
You know, as you can tell, I live and breathe this stuff, and I really enjoy automation. It's been a large part of my career, 20 years. So I started in the 16-bit days of QA Run, which is a long time ago. But as we see sort of the sort of trends coming along, and Matt really highlighted it quite nicely, you know, dare I mention the P word again, and try to avoid that P word if we can avoid it. But, you know, the pandemic has caused or it created an opportunity to do things in a different way. And as a business, we will need to respond to that. Those who don't respond will be left behind. It's become very clear that online retail is not going to go away anytime soon, not for the foreseeable future anyway. So with that, people's expectations are different. In fact, my expectations are different. It used to be some of the big retail companies, you could order it one day and it would turn up the next. Well, now in the pandemic, things have changed a little bit where it's taken a little bit longer. Well, I'm used to having it next day. So that's creating a challenge for people. As Boots, we're not affected by that challenge, but certainly expectations by customers are changing, and we need to be able to respond with our digital offerings in a way that satisfies that need and at the expectation of what they've got. But then equally, we've got a technical debt situation that sits with old systems that organizations like Boots, many others, Tesco's, all those other kind of companies will have technical debt sitting around, and we have to also address that technical debt. So we may see an acceleration of retirement of systems and the things, the demising of systems that are not necessarily adding value, that are more older things that are just not needed anymore. I think we will more than likely see automation testing becoming more and more a feature of how we deliver solutions faster. But that's not to say that automation is going to be the be all and end all of everything, because I think the exploratory testing noise is certainly ramping up a lot, where you need, as much as you want that fast automation, you need somebody with a critical eye that can look at something and go, actually, that's right, that's wrong. And humans are really good at that. However, that's not to say that AI and machine learning are not catching up very, very quickly. It used to be that visual testing couldn't be done by a machine, just couldn't be done. You would write more source code than there was in the source code of the application you were testing, but that's not true now. Things like autonomic. I knew I was going to get that wrong. Those things that are now coming about, and other visual testing type products that are out there in the market. Those things are going to be valuable in doing the certain level of business kind of users type testing that you're going to want to do. But I think you'll see that acceleration though through that, from a comprehensive set of API testing at that core, because I think without that, you're not going to be able to reliably ensure that the other side, the UI, is going to work correctly. So I think it's going to be an exciting time over the next 6 to 12 months. I think also we will see greater insights and greater predictions of things like defect density. At the moment, that sort of has gone away a lot. In the old testing world, we used to look at things like defect density and the quality approach and all that, and it's sort of gone away a little bit. But with using a lot of the metrics that we're getting out of our automation, what would that do to our sprints and to our agile approach if we knew that the defect density was, say, 20-30%? Would that change the estimation model? More than likely. Would it change if it was something more, or if it was less? Those are the sort of insights I think we're going to end up getting from all this automation that we're gathering. It's all data at the end of the day, and it just needs processing.
Okay, that's great. Just a reminder to everybody on the out there on the attendee list, if you've got any further questions to ask, please put them in the chat box on this. I mean, Matt, is there anything you'd like to add that you've not already covered in terms of your journey at Boots and the digital futures?
I think I'm giving everybody war and peace today. I think the trend that we're seeing is just not going to go away. Automation testing is going to be here to stay for a long time, and I think the tools are only going to just get more and more clever, and be more and more specialized in the approaches that they will take. And the really important thing will be how you take all of that data and pull it together into one a quality approach. Matt mentioned a single view of quality. Something that I've been banging on about for about a year is, we when it was the old days when you had the traceability matrices and you had the spreadsheet with the pass fails in it, you have those sort of single view of quality, and now there's not a lot in that single view of quality. You can't see it because it's all in different systems, it's all in different parts, and one of the really key factors is to bring that all together into a single view that someone can then make a decision about whether that build is good and whether you can take it forward, rather than someone having to collate all that information and make interpretations. You want to present raw data and then allow the interpretations to flow.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for that, and thank you very much for your time today. So we do have a question. I'm looking into the answer because I'm not 100%, but we've been asked whether via the autonomy, whether you can receive the reports via email, and what you get. Actually, I'll very quickly just share my screen again, because there is something that we do get. Let me just drag this over here. Share that particular screen so you can, got too many screens. So this is what you get. So one of the things I didn't get on to show you in part of the live demo for Autonomic was basically you could, once you've created the test case, you can make that part of a suite, and when you've got it part of a suite, you can schedule that suite to run as often as you want to. And what you get is whenever that suite executes, you will get a report that looks similar to this. So, this tells you what passed, what failed, and the link in the report here, which you can then just click on to go to the appropriate report. And basically, this is an old email that I got because I actually, prior to the webinar, I actually deleted a lot of my report content just to make it a bit tidier. So what you get right now is this particular type of thing. But we also have webhooks. So there's various ways in which you can get notifications of passes and of fails. That's true from the core platform as well as for the when you're executing from your CI engine of choice.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, Andy, you could obviously do that within your CI/CD, couldn't you? Within Jenkins, Jenkins can obviously mail out the notifications at that point, so you could send that report through from there, and that would give you that functionality if it wasn't there already. It'll also email the world if you wanted to, which you'll end up setting rules for everything.
That's an interesting question, because we talk about the whole rise of the citizen tester and the relevance of what they're doing, and the desire to give them kind of more programming and testing power. So when you start to talk about that in the context of continuous integration, some CI engines can be quite scary. So how do you see the rise of like the citizen tester and using things in CI? Do you kind of think that the CI engines need to evolve as well?
Yeah, because they're not, well, I've played around with Jenkins before, and it's not particularly the most user-friendly thing in the world. But then some of the work that we've been doing recently, because we've got a partnership with Microsoft, is been looking at things like Azure pipelines. We're in the Azure DevOps space. Now that's got a little, it's not probably as comprehensive, but it is in other spaces more user-friendly, which is a kind of roundabout way of saying it's slightly better, but not with it as feature-rich right now. And I think that those sorts of tools are going to emerge, because Jenkins is very difficult to use from a starting point. It is extremely powerful, no doubt about it, but it's got a very steep learning curve, and I think those sort of things will try to be reduced as other software vendors capitalize on the fact that this isn't going to go away. There's an opportunity here.
Absolutely. Matt, I believe you've got a question. Matt Brunn, that is, sorry.
Yes, this is a little bit, it's completely unscripted, and I hope I'm not going to put Matt in a difficult position, but I'm interested in your opinion. Let me turn the video on as well. I'm interested in your opinion on this. I mentioned at the start when I was doing the introduction that as I've gone out and kind of delivered a similar set of those slides or had conversations with customers, when we talk about shifting left and shifting right, there are organizations are still maintaining or building the centers of excellence where they really want to locate quality assurance and testing in that staging or integration phase there. They get that you still need to have that really important level of confidence and expertise in that area. But there also seems to be this move out, and very much around citizen testing, as you and Andy were just talking about there, where they're also having a role to go out and educate more and coach people more in both, particularly in development, but also in post-release and in production and monitoring as well. And so the role of that team is becoming broader and more, I guess, more interesting. But there's still that requirement in the middle piece to still do the core piece there. I don't know whether I've made a mess of my question, but I think you probably are smart enough to know where I'm going with it. But is that something that you're seeing?
So one of the things that I do probably need to just make sure I caveat everything. So many of these opinions are my own, rather than give you a bit more Greenpeace Alliance opinions. So this is me operating on my own back. But I think you're right. I think there is a trend to that SDETs, QA, whatever you call them, are going to become a bit more multidisciplined. There's even that sort of blurring of the lines between what we would typically call an engineer or dev engineer and an SDET, because really it's code at the end of the day. And I think the thing that I think will happen more and more is that automation will be treated a little bit more like a software product, rather than just a piece of automation that sits over here and your code sits over there. I think actually there'll be much more of that merging between the two. So it's not necessarily to your paradigm. I think it will be a shift to the middle where the things will all start to overlap, because shifting left doesn't work in a lot of respects, because you then end up with a silo and you have to throw things over the fence. Where shifting right doesn't work, because you then end up with, again, the same problem. So without bringing it into the middle, I think we'll then merge that a little bit more, so that you will end up then with a much more multidisciplined type of team, rather than a specialist automation person or specialist development person.
Thanks, but actually I think that's a really good way of looking at it. It's not necessarily when perhaps shifting left is completely the wrong way to look at it almost. It's more like it's all sort of shifting together. And when we talk about things like, velocity and quality all existing at the same time, it has to be going on all at the same time to enable the achievement of those goals that people want, both that, the confidence that organizations need that they're releasing high quality product, but also at the velocity that they need. And I think that's a neat way of looking at it, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think also you'll end up with that extra little piece in there as well, which will be your business leaders that will then end up having to become a little bit more techy in terms of understanding what it is this automation thing does. I think it will end up being that, almost like the principles of the three amigos or any of those other things that we've got. Yeah. That we will end up with a situation where you will have a multiple discipline team that will understand what is happening and understand and be accountable for that piece of work that they are delivering.
Right. Thanks, Matt. I don't think there are any more questions. So I think what we'll probably do is give people a few minutes back.
That's right.
And first of all, thank you to Matt, especially thank you to you for your time today and for your openness, and also for getting the balance right between you as an individual and but also versus the company that you work for. So really great to hear from you and to hear your opinions, and thank you for answering some questions on the fly as we went along as well. Really appreciate it.
That's right. Pleasure.
Thanks again to Andy and Laszlo for their presentations as well. So, and a message to you all before you go: as you exit this Test Automation Day, you'll receive a quick survey on today's presentations, and we'd greatly appreciate it if you could give us some feedback. That's how we can make these events better for you, the audience, every time we do them. And you'll also receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording and the slides from today as well. So on behalf of SourceLabs and on behalf of all our presenters, just like to thank you all for joining us, and wish you a very good evening. Thank you.